We are going to begin our study on page 141 in this session. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to cover everything in the study notes. We're going to skip over some things in the next few pages, and I'll tell you exactly which ones we're going to skip. But we do want to do what we find on pages 141 through 144. So, first of all, we're going to look at a summary of the three woes. You know that there are three woes that are referred to in the trumpets. The first woe is the fifth trumpet. I'm summarizing. The second woe is the sixth trumpet. And the third woe is the seventh trumpet. Okay? So very simple. Fifth trumpet, first woe, sixth trumpet, second woe, seventh trumpet, third woe. You say, how do we know that? Well, let's take a look at it. Revelation 9, 1 through 11, we're studying where it says summary of the three woes. Revelation chapter 9 and verses 1 through 11 describe the fifth trumpet. And then when you get to verse 12, after the fifth trumpet, it says one woe is what? It's past. So what is the first woe? The fifth trumpet. But then it says, still, behold, still two more woes are coming after these things. So after the fifth trumpet, which is the first woe, there's going to be two more woes. And then I want you to notice, we're following here, Revelation 11, 2 through 12 is a further expansion of the fifth trumpet. You need to pay careful attention here because there is an interlude after the fifth trumpet, after the fifth and sixth trumpets. You have Revelation 10 and 11. It breaks the flow. So pay close attention to this because it's very important. Revelation 11, 2 through 12 is a further expansion of the fifth trumpet and the first woe. In your spare time this afternoon, go over this so that it gets clear in your mind. Then Revelation 11, verse 13 ends by saying, in the same hour there was a great earthquake, and a tenth of the city fell. This is describing the French Revolution, France. In the earthquake, 7,000 people were killed, and the rest, the word rest, once again, is remnant. It's the word loipos. And the remnant were afraid, not a good translation. A better translation is feared. In the same way that the first angel's message says, fear God. Okay? So you have enemies in this verse, and you also have what? The remnant who fears, and what do? They give glory to the God of heaven. What is this introducing? The first angel's message. So you see two groups there? The enemies, and those who fear God and give glory to Him, which are the remnant. Following me? Okay. Now, Revelation 9, 13 through 21, which is the sixth trumpet, is also the second woe. Okay? So Revelation 9, 13 to 21, the sixth trumpet and the second woe. Revelation 10, 1 through 11, 1 is a further expansion of the sixth trumpet. That's why I said the book of Revelation is a tricky book. It's not in chronological order. One of the most difficult parts of studying Revelation is to decipher how it was organized. Because there are cycles and flashbacks and foretastes and, there's a way in which you can decipher it all, but it takes serious time to study it. So Revelation 9, 13 to 21 is the sixth trumpet and the second woe. Revelation 10, verse 1 through 11 verse 1 is an expansion of the sixth trumpet and the second woe. Then, Revelation 11, 15 to 17 is the seventh trumpet and the third woe. When this trumpet blows, probation closes, the plagues fall, and the second coming of Jesus occurs. This is further amplified in Revelation 15 to 19. Do you have the picture in your mind? I'm dedicating a lot of time to this because this is critically important for what we're going to study in the future. So what is the first woe? Fifth trumpet. What is the sixth woe? Second woe? Sixth trumpet. What is the third woe? The seventh trumpet. What is an expansion of the fifth trumpet? Revelation 11, 2 to 12. What is an expansion of the sixth trumpet? Revelation 10, 1 through 11, 1. 11, 1 really belongs with chapter 10. We'll notice that. And then, where is Revelation, the seventh trumpet, expanded? In Revelation 15 through 19, the close of probation and the plagues and the second coming of Christ. Now, what is the meaning of the word woe? It's also translated alas, a word that we never use. The Greek word uai, not Hawaii, uai, is an exclamatory interjection that portends, in other words, it announces pain, calamity, suffering, and sorrow. In fact, the Septuagint, the Greek translation of the Old Testament, in the New, uses the word to describe the retribution that falls upon those who are not faithful to the covenant. And so let's look at several uses in the Septuagint, in the Greek translation of the Old Testament. Isaiah 3 verse 11 is an oracle against Jerusalem. It's a woe against Jerusalem. The same is true of Jeremiah 4:13, Jeremiah 10:19. All are woes upon Jerusalem. It's the same word, uai, that is found in the New Testament, in the Greek Old Testament. In Jeremiah 50 verse 27, you have a woe or an oracle against Babylon. Ezekiel 2 verse 10, you have a woe or an oracle against Jerusalem. In Nahum 3, 1 through 4, there is a woe upon Nineveh. And in Zephaniah 3, 1 through 4, you have a woe upon Jerusalem. And then you find a description of the destruction and the chaos that comes as a result. Finally, Zechariah 11, verse 7, from the LXX, or the Septuagint, is an oracle against, or a woe against, the false shepherds. How is the word used in the New Testament? The word uai. The word is used in Matthew 18, verse 7, woe to he who mistreats a child. It's like tying a great big rock around your neck and being thrown into the sea. In Matthew 23, you have the woes on the scribes and Pharisees. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees. And then he says, who's going to deliver you from hell? So woe is something very serious that is going to come. Matthew 24, verse 19 says, woe to those who are alive in the final tribulation. Matthew 26, verse 24, woe to the one who betrays the Son of Man. Revelation 12, verse 12, woe to those who are on the earth. The dragon has come down with great wrath, knowing that he has but a short time. And, of course, Revelation 18, verse 10, and verses 16 through 19, you have the woes upon Babylon. You know, the word woe is used in Revelation 18. Woe, woe, woe. And you can read there. It's the collapse of the world economy, basically. So, basically, the last three trumpets are three woes, which means horrendous calamities that are going to take place. Now, let's look at the textual location of the three woes. And we're going to look at this carefully. let's read Revelation 8, verses 12 and 13. The fourth angel sounded, this is the fourth trumpet, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise a third of the night. So which trumpet is this? This is the fourth trumpet, right? Which we studied yesterday. What does it describe? What period of history? The period of the Roman Catholic papacy's dominion, when it eclipsed Christ, it eclipsed the scriptures, and it persecuted the stars so that they would not shine. People, in other words. And then immediately after the fourth trumpet, it says in verse 13, and I looked and I heard an angel flying through the midst of heaven, saying with a loud voice, woe, woe, woe. How many? Three. To the inhabitants of the earth, because of the remaining blasts of the trumpet of the three angels who are about to sound. What are the three woes? Trumpets 5, 6, and 7, right?
Yes.
A student from elementary school can understand that. Now, Revelation 9, we just read verse 12, that's the fourth trumpet. Revelation 8:13 introduces three woes, which are the three following trumpets. Then Revelation 9, 1 through 11 has the first woe and the fifth trumpet. You say, how do we know that? Well, because the Bible says so. No, it's Revelation chapter 9 and verse 12, after the sixth trumpet. One woe is past. The fifth trumpet has just sounded. One woe is past. Behold, still two more woes are coming after these things. So what would the two that were still lacking? 6 and 7, right? Now, Revelation 9, 13 to 21 has the sixth trumpet. Now, don't miss this point. This is a critical point. Revelation 9, 13 to 21 describes the sixth trumpet, which is which woe? The second woe. But here is the interesting thing. When the sixth trumpet ends, there is not a verse that says the second woe is past. Are you with me? Or not? You have to wait till after chapters 10 and 11 for the second woe to pass. What does that mean? It simply means that Revelation 10 and 11 are part of what? Of the sixth trumpet. They are an interlude in the sixth trumpet. Are you understanding what I'm saying? And we're going to find in the course of our study that there are two views in Revelation 10 and 11. In Revelation chapter 10, you have the side of the remnant. In Revelation 11, you have the side of the enemies of the remnant. But we'll come to that in a moment. So let's go to the bottom of page 142. Revelation 9, 13 to 21 is a description of the sixth trumpet. When this trumpet concludes in verse 21, there is no reference to the second woe passing. This seems to indicate that chapters 10 and 11 will have what? More to say about the period of the sixth trumpet. So let's go to the next page. Revelation 10, verse 1 through 11:13, which is the interlude, further amplifies certain aspects of the fourth, fifth, and sixth trumpets. So the interlude is going to add details about trumpet 4, 5, and 6. And now notice the bullet points under this, because it's an amplification of what are the contents of Revelation 10, 1 through 11:13. In Revelation 11, 2 through 6, it takes us back to the 1260 years. Are you following me? We'll go slow, because the structure is of critical importance. It describes the two witnesses witnessing in sackcloth for 1260 years. What trumpet is that? That's the fourth trumpet. Then Revelation 11, 7 through 10 describes what? The French Revolution. What trumpet would that be? That would be the fifth trumpet, right? And we're going to prove that from Scripture. When the two witnesses were killed, this was 1793 to 1797. And the fifth trumpet is the first what? The first woe. Then in Revelation 11, 11 and 12, describes the resurrection of the two witnesses. What are the two witnesses? The Bible, the Old and New Testament. So what happens after the two witnesses are killed in the French Revolution? Verses 11 and 12 say that they what? They resurrect. In other words, people are going to now what? Study the Scriptures. By the way, because the little book of Revelation 10 has been opened, the book that was sealed in the time of the end is now opened. So Revelation 11, 11 and 12 describes the resurrection of the two witnesses after the French Revolution. They no longer testify how? In sackcloth, but rather enjoy great power and prestige. The miraculous resurrection of the Bible not only describes the establishment of multiple Bible societies in the aftermath of the French Revolution, it also portrays the great Advent awakening and the renewed study of Bible prophecy, because the little book of Daniel was opened at the time of the end. When does the time of the end begin? 1798, when the French Revolution ends. Are you seeing the importance of studying the structure? Not only symbols, the structure. Then Revelation 11 verse 13 introduces the two groups that will exist at the end of time. What are those two groups? The first group are the what? The enemies of the two witnesses. The enemies were how many? In the previous verses, how many were the enemies? Two. The previous context identifies the first enemy as the what? The Gentiles. Now you say, now what does that mean, the Gentiles? It simply means the Roman Catholic papacy. We're going to notice that. Were the Gentiles the one that trampled the holy city and persecuted the saints during the 1260 years? Absolutely. But it was people who claimed to be Christians but were really not Christians. And the second enemy in the previous context is what? The beast from the bottomless pit. In other words, the French Revolution that warred against the Bible. So you have two enemies that are opposed to the Bible. Who are they? The papacy and the spirit of the French Revolution. Now here's the interesting point. Revelation uses the word enemies only twice. And in both references, both of those references are in chapter 11. Verse 5 and verse 12. In the first instance, the enemies obscured the two witnesses by forbidding the Bible during the 1260 years. In the second instance, the enemies, what did they do? They killed the two witnesses. So the first enemy obscures the two witnesses. The second one kills the two witnesses in the French Revolution. Are you with me so far? Yes or no? Good. But there's a second group that is mentioned in Revelation 11 verse 13. That group is the loipos, the remnant. I don't know why versions translate the rest. It's the remnant. The word loipos, the remnant of her seed, the same verse, the same word that is used in Revelation 12:17. So the remnant, what do the remnant do? They fear God and what? And give Him glory. Is that introducing the following section of Revelation, particularly the three angels' message? Absolutely. And then in Revelation 11:14, now don't miss this point, 11:14, then the second woe comes to an end. Notice verse 14. It says in 11 verse 14, the second woe is past. Behold, the third woe is coming quickly. Are Revelation 10 and 11 part of the sixth trumpet?
Yes.
Are they part of the second woe?
Yes.
Yes. It's an interlude that explains events that take place primarily during the fifth and sixth trumpets. I hope you're understanding what I'm saying. Vitally important to understand what we're studying. Now, the next page. The sixth trumpet presents the negative side. It amplifies the negative side of the sixth trumpet, which is the perspective of whom? The enemies of end-time events. And Revelation 10 presents what? The positive side of the end-time events, the perspective of the remnant. I hope you're following this. The sixth trumpet presents the negative side of the enemies. Revelation 10 presents the positive side, the perspective of the remnant. Expressed another way, the sixth trumpet describes the attitude of the enemies of the two witnesses in the end time, while Revelation 10 describes the attitude of the faithful remnant during the same period. The enemies are against Scripture, whereas the remnant fears God and gives Him glory. Finally, the sixth trumpet carries us from 1844 all the way to the close of probation when the mystery of God is finished. This occurs when the seventh trumpet is about to sound. When the seventh trumpet sounds, Jesus takes over the kingdoms of the world at His coming. And then the blast of the seventh trumpet is what? The third woe. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that the third woe is the seventh trumpet, even though Scripture doesn't, there's not a text that says the third woe is finished, because the seventh trumpet is the end. But you know that the seventh trumpet is the third woe. Now, we are going to skip, I wish we had time to do this, but we don't. I'm going to skip from page 144 through page 147. I hope that you will study those, pages. Don't just file the study notes in your bookcase. Read what we're not able to cover. Now, I am going to deal very briefly with pages 148 through 159. We're going to go very quickly because I want to get to the fifth trumpet now. What we have in these pages that I'm going to pretty much skip, what I want you to see is that the book, The Great Controversy, follows the exact order of the trumpets. Okay? That's what these pages contain. So let's go to page 148. First trumpet. Great Controversy. Which page is in the Great Controversy? 17 to 38. The title of the chapter? The Destruction of Jerusalem. Well, well. The second trumpet. Page 39 to 49. Guess what the title is? Persecution in the early centuries. It's speaking about the persecutions of the Roman Empire against the Christians. Are you following me?
Yes.
Ellen White here describes the persecution of Christians by the Roman Empire, and then briefly describes the removal of its restraining influence. The spirit of compromise and conformity was restrained for a time by the fierce persecutions which the church endured under paganism. So the manifestation of the man of sin was being what? Restrained as long as Rome, pagan Rome, was ruling. Let me ask you, would the second trumpet certainly include the incursion of the barbarian tribes and the removal of the restrainer? Of course. Now, it's noteworthy that Uriah Smith dedicated the first 4 trumpets to the barbarian invasions and even mentioned some of the barbarian leaders by name. However, Ellen White never mentions the barbarian invasions directly in the Great Controversy. If the invasions merited 4 trumpets, why did she not mention them directly even once? However, she was aware of the breakup of the Roman Empire. As we can see from this quotation here, the vast empire of Rome crumbled to pieces, and from its ruins, this is now the 3rd and 4th trumpet, right? From its ruins rose that mighty power, the Roman Catholic Church. This church boasts her infallibility and her hereditary religion. 3rd trumpet. Ellen White describes in Great Controversy, page 49 through page 60. What is the title? An Era of Spiritual Darkness. Interesting, huh? Well, we can't go through all of this material. Then she describes the 4th trumpet in the middle of page, this is the middle of page 149, the 4th trumpet in Great Controversy, page 55 to 264. So you have to go to Great Controversy and see if what I'm telling you is true. Because, I can't go through all of this. We just don't have the time. It's frustrating. Maybe we need to have 2 weeks of Anchor. Well, there's 3 or 4 of you that would like that. So Ellen White, what does she comment here? The apostasy under the 3rd trumpet intensified as the Dark Ages transpired. Under the 4th trumpet, you remember, the sun, the moon, and the stars experienced a partial eclipse. As we have already noted, the sun represents Jesus, the moon represents the Bible, and the stars symbolize God's people. Notice Ellen White's comment on page 55. The accession of the Roman Church to power marked the beginning of the what? Dark Ages. As her power increased, the darkness deepened. And if you read page 55 to 264, look up in those pages the word light and the word darkness. Time and again, Ellen White refers to darkness and darkness and darkness and darkness and obscurity there in this period. Why? Because it's the 4th trumpet. The sun, moon, and stars have been eclipsed. Are you with me? Let's read some of those. Bottom of page 149. In order for Satan to maintain his sway over men and establish the authority of the papal usurper, he must keep them in ignorance of what? Of the Scriptures. The Bible would exalt God, and place finite men in their true position. Therefore, its sacred truths must be what? Concealed. And what else? Suppressed. Did the papacy kill the Bible? No, it didn't kill the Bible. What did it do? It suppressed the Bible. Concealed the Bible. Who killed the Bible? The French Revolution killed it. She continues, the Roman Church adopted this policy. For hundreds of years, the circulation of the Bible was prohibited. They weren't burned, it was prohibited. The people were forbidden to read it or to have it in their houses. And on principles, priests and prelates interpreted its teachings to sustain their pretensions. Thus the Pope came to be almost universally acknowledged as the vicegerent of God on earth, endowed with authority over church and state. It's interesting that after this quotation, Ellen White describes all of the errors and heresies that entered the church during the period of the Dark Ages. So what is the darkness? The heresies and the errors that were taught. It bears noting that eclipse of the Scriptures and the work of Christ during this period was partial as indicated by the expression what? 1/3. Let's read some of those statements where Ellen White refers to light and darkness in the following pages. Let's skip the one from Councils on Education. Let's go to the one that says Satan had urged on the papal priests and prelates to do what? To bury the word of truth beneath the rubbish of error, heresy, and superstition. But in a most wonderful manner, it was preserved uncorrupted through all the ages of darkness. Great Controversy 72, as the light illuminated their understanding and made glad their hearts. This is the Waldenses. They longed to shed its what? Its beams upon those who were in darkness of papal error. See, because the heavenly bodies had been what? Eclipsed. Great Controversy 61. Amid the gloom that settled upon the earth during the long period of papal supremacy, the light of truth, now here comes the 1/3 idea, the light of truth could not be wholly extinguished. Only what? Partially extinguished. In every age, there were witnesses for God, men who cherished faith in Christ as the only mediator between God and man, who held the Bible as the only rule of life and who hallowed the true Sabbath. Let's go to the next quotation, Great Controversy 65 and 66. Behind the lofty bulwarks of the mountains, in all ages the refuge of the persecuted and oppressed, the Waldenses found where? A hiding place. Here the light of truth was kept what? Burning amid the darkness of the Middle Ages. Here for 1,000 years, witnesses for truth maintained the ancient faith. Were the sun and moon totally eclipsed? Was the testimony of the stars, God's people, totally eclipsed? No. Next statement. In the schools, whither they went, speaking about the Waldenses, they were not to make confidence of any. Their garments were so prepared as to conceal their greatest treasure, the precious manuscripts of the Scriptures. See, the Scriptures are giving their witness, but they're doing it in sackcloth, in obscurity. Let's jump down to the one from Great Controversy 73 and 74, particularly the highlighted portions. Thus the light of truth penetrated many a what? Darkened mind, rolling back the cloud of what? Gloom, until the Son of Righteousness shone into the heart with healing in his beams. Let's go to the next page. Let's talk about John Wycliffe. Notice the theme of light and darkness again. Except among the Waldenses, the Word of God had for ages been what? Notice it's not killing the two witnesses. Locked up, suppressed, concealed, hidden. Except among the Waldenses, the Word of God had for ages been locked up in languages known only to the learned. But the time had come for the Scriptures to be translated and given to the people of different lands in their native tongue. The world, she's talking about now, the Protestant Reformation is rising. The world had passed its what? Midnight. By the way, is it still dark after midnight? Yes. But the midnight is the deepest darkness. So now the Protestant Reformation, the light is beginning to what? The light is going to soon appear. The world had passed its midnight. The hours of darkness were what? Wearing away. In many lands appeared tokens of the coming dawn. Why? Because now the Scriptures were going to be brought to light. The next chapter on Jerome, Huss and Jerome. Notice once again the idea of light and darkness. Are you understanding the fourth trumpet in the light of this? Ellen White is commenting on the fourth trumpet. God permitted great light to shine upon the minds of these chosen men. That is Huss and Jerome, revealing to them many of the errors of Rome, but they did not receive all the what? All the light that was to be given to the world. Through these, his servants, God was leading his people what? There it is, out of darkness of Romanism. But there were many and great obstacles for them to meet. As he led them on step by step as they could bear it, they were not prepared to receive what? All the light at once, like the full glory of the noontide sun to those who have long dwelt what? In darkness. It would, if presented, have caused them to turn away. Then Ellen White talks about Martin Luther. These are all the following pages that, great controversy, the fourth trumpet. Where does she comment the fourth trumpet? She comments it in Great Controversy 55 to 264. All of these are from those pages. Notice what she has to say about Martin Luther at the bottom of page 152. Foremost among those who were called to lead the church from what? The darkness of popery into what? The light of a purer faith stood Martin Luther. Zealous, ardent, and devoted, knowing no fear but the fear of God, and acknowledging no foundation for religious faith but by the what? Holy Scriptures. Luther was the man for his time. Through him, God accomplished a great work for the reformation of the church and the enlightenment of the world. Are you catching the point? You'll find many other references. This is just a sampling of the passages that deal with light and darkness. And then, interestingly enough, after describing this period of darkness and that the light was about to dawn in the Protestant Reformation, I'll bet you can't guess what the next chapter is. The French Revolution. Hello? What trumpet would that be? That'd be trumpet number 5. And we're going to see it clearly as we study along. So the next one is the French Revolution, which is the 5th trumpet and the first what? Woe. And the first woe. Then, listen up, the 6th trumpet and the second woe is described on pages 299 through 612. Because you'll notice in the book of Revelation, the 5th and 6th trumpet are the longest. So Ellen White has to make it the longest too. Now the 6th trumpet and the second woe give us a view of the righteous and a view of whom? Of the wicked. Now here's the interesting point. Pages 299 to 491, Ellen White presents the emphasis upon the righteous and God's gathering message. Page 500 to 612, she emphasizes the wicked and Satan's gathering the wicked. Does that fit with the interlude? Did Ellen White sit down and figure this out? She said, well, I need to put the interlude here because the interlude's in Revelation. No. God, the same Spirit that guided John in composing Revelation is the same Spirit that inspired Ellen G. White. She's following the same sequence. Now let's continue. Immediately after the chapter on the French Revolution, this is a very interesting detail. Ellen White goes back to 1620. What date was the French Revolution? 1793, till it ended in 1797, right? And the Pope was taken captive the next year, which is really the culmination of the spirit of the French Revolution. But in the very next chapter, after one of the on the French Revolution, Ellen White goes back in time to the arrival of pilgrims in 1620. See, she also has flashbacks in her writings. But you're going to notice that this is extraordinary. She describes the arrival of the Pilgrim Fathers in America, searching for civil and religious liberty. This prepared a place for what? For the preaching of the 3 angels' messages with power to the world, and thus gathering God's people. Notably, Revelation 12 describes how the dragon was spewing waters out of his mouth during the 1260 years. Remember that the dragon was spewing water out of his mouth to try and drown the woman? However, the text tells us that the earth came to her what? Came to her rescue and swallowed up the waters of persecution. The earth here represents what? The territory, not the United States, the territory of the United States. There was no United States in 1620. There was only colonies that belonged to England. That's why it says it doesn't say that the beast with two horns helped the woman. It says the earth helped the woman, from where the beast with two horns will later rise. So it's the earth comes to her rescue, swallows up the waters of persecution. The earth represents the territory of the United States that provided refuge for those who were suffering persecution in Europe. The United States became the beacon for other Western nations to establish secular governments. You know, this is an interesting statement by James Madison in 1822. When was the Declaration of Independence uttered? 1776. And the Constitution? 1787. And the Bill of Rights? 1791. So by 1822, the experiment had a few years. And notice what Madison said. We are teaching the world. Who are we teaching? Who is the United States teaching? The world. We're teaching them the right thing now, but soon the United States is going to teach us the wrong thing. Because at first it has two horns like a lamb, but then it speaks like a dragon. By the way, it doesn't speak like a dragon while it has the two horns. This is a case, once again, where the introductory verse has the beginning and ending. When it rises, it had two horns like a lamb, but the end is it speaks like a dragon. Are you with me? So, he wrote this, we are teaching the world the great truth that governments do better without kings and nobles than with them. So in other words, he's saying we are teaching the world that they should establish republican governments. Not the Republican Party. Republics, where the power flows from the people up rather than from a king down. But then he says, the merit will be doubled by the other lesson. In other words, that religion flourishes in greater purity without than with the aid of government. This is republicanism and Protestantism. Separation of church and state, civil and religious liberty. Next page. It is remarkable. This is another indication that Ellen White was right on target. The same Spirit was inspiring her as the book of Revelation. It is remarkable that both Revelation 12 and Ellen White describe the 1260 years, the French Revolution, and then go back in time to describe the arrival of the Pilgrims. You say, how's that? Well, in Revelation chapter 12, it says that the woman flees to the wilderness for how long? 1260 years. But then it says, the earth helped the woman. Did that take place before the 1260 years ended? Yes. The United States, the territory, provided refuge for those who were being persecuted. So in Revelation 12, it speaks about the dragon persecuting the church for 1260 years, but then when it says the earth helps the woman, which takes you back to the pilgrims coming and the United States providing refuge. Is that what Ellen White does? After describing the French Revolution, what does she do? The 1260 years in the French Revolution, she goes back and she speaks about the arrival of the pilgrims. Amazing. Beginner's luck. No. In the following chapters, Ellen White wrote about the great Second Advent awakening after 1798, the Millerite movement, the Great Disappointment, the opening of the heavenly temple for judgment. Let me ask you, what is the center of focus here? The enemies or the remnant? The remnant. The following chapters describe the resurrection of the two witnesses, and the opening of the little book of Daniel in Revelation 10. This is the positive side of the sixth trumpet. God musters his forces with three angels' messages to gather his remnant on his side. Notice the titles of the chapters. Heralds of the morning. This is the signs in the sun, moon, and stars as an announcement of the coming message of judgment. An American reformer. It's a chapter about William Miller. Light through the darkness. The disciples' misunderstanding of the prophecies concerning the first coming sets the stage for their misunderstanding of the prophecy of the 2300 days. A great religious awakening. She described Joseph Wolff, Anglican ministers, Emmanuel Lacunza, Johann Albrecht Bengel, Francois Samuel Robert Louis Gaussen, child preachers, William Miller, proclaiming the judgment hour message. Is that what Revelation 10 is all about? Then you have a warning rejected. This is the proclamation by the Millerites of the second angel's message, that Protestantism has fallen, and calling people to come out. Prophecies fulfilled. It describes a series of prophecies that pointed to the great Advent awakening. What is the sanctuary? It introduces the idea of the investigative judgment in the Holy of Holies, the most holy ministry of Christ. God's law immutable. The remnant understood the importance of the law when the most holy place opened. A work of reform. That's the need to restore the Sabbath to its proper place. And then modern revivals, which distinguish a genuine revival from a counterfeit revival. And finally, facing life's record, which is a description of the investigative judgment. What is the center of focus of all of these chapters? It's what we have in Revelation 10. The opening of the little book, the beginning of the investigative judgment, the cleansing of the sanctuary, the measuring of the temple. So in the context of the sixth trumpet, she is describing what is in Revelation chapter 10. That's the view of the righteous. But now here comes the amazing thing. We can also make, this is on page 156, we can also make a strong argument that the following chapters in the Great Controversy all describe the period of the sixth trumpet. The sixth trumpet here is described as a view of the wicked, which were introduced in Revelation 9, 13 to 21. What are the following chapters? What are the titles of the following chapters? The origin of evil. Enmity between God and Satan. The agency of evil spirits. Snares of Satan. The first great deception. Can our dead speak to us? What is the focus here? Oh, the focus is on how Satan is trying to gather whom? The wicked. Liberty of conscience threatened. The impending conflict. The Scriptures a safeguard. The final warning. The focus is on how Satan is gathering the wicked on his side for the final controversy between good and evil, between the righteous and the unrighteous. Regarding the gathering of the righteous and the wicked, in Revelation 10, Ellen White wrote the following. Let's read 7 Bible Commentary, page 971. The mighty angel who instructed John was no less a personage than Jesus Christ. Setting his right foot on the sea and his left on the dry land shows the part which he is acting in the closing scenes of the great controversy with Satan. This position denotes his supreme power and authority over the earth. The controversy had waxed stronger and more determined from age to age, and will continue to do so to the concluding scenes when masterly working of the powers of darkness shall reach their height. Satan, united with what? With evil men, will deceive the whole world and the churches who receive not the love of the truth. However, the mighty angel demands attention. He cries with a loud voice. He is to show the power and authority of his voice to those who have united with Satan to oppose truth. So the mighty angel of Revelation 10 is going to call those on the devil's side to come over. And Satan, on the other hand, the enemies, are going to be working to gather people on the devil's side. So this is the perspective of the interlude that we find in Revelation chapter 10 and Revelation chapter 11. And then let's go to page 159, page 159. The seventh trumpet, then Ellen White describes the seventh trumpet. When does the mystery of God come to an end? Right before what? The seventh angel blows his trumpet. What is the finishing of the mystery of God? It's the close of probation. The mystery of God is the preaching of the gospel. We're going to see that when we study about the little book. So the mystery of God is the preaching of the gospel. So what is the ending of the mystery of God? It's the finishing of the preaching of the gospel. So when the seventh trumpet is about to sound, probation closes, and then you have the plagues, and eventually the second coming of Christ, which is the seventh trumpet. Now, page 613, do you know what chapter that is? It's called the time of trouble. And do you know with what verse Ellen White begins that chapter? At that time Michael shall stand up, which is the close of probation. And there will be a time of trouble such as never was. See, that's the finishing of the mystery of God when the seventh trumpet is about to sound. And then you move on all the way to page 661, and you're going to find the second coming, the millennium, the post-millennium, and the new heavens and the new earth. Are you following me? Amazing how Ellen White follows the exact order of the seven trumpets, beginning with the destruction of Jerusalem, not with four trumpets applying to the barbarian invasions. It's a distraction. What it does is it takes the eyes away from the flow of history, how God has been guiding history with His hand. Now, we only have like 5 minutes left for this segment, so let's go to page 160. I was hoping to be able to finish this the next session, but we might have to take part of session number 4 today to finish this. Let's go to Revelation chapter 9, and let's read about the fifth. Probably we'll just read the passage now, and then we'll go to page 160 in our next segment. But I want to read the fifth trumpet so that we have the details clear in our minds. It says in verse 1, "Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth." Notice he didn't see a star fall from heaven to earth. Actually, we're going to notice that really it says that had fallen from heaven to the earth. It fell before the fifth trumpet. But anyway, it says, "Then the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fallen from heaven to the earth. To him was given the key to the bottomless pit." So what is this being going to do? He's going to open the bottomless pit. And all hell is going to break loose. Verse 2, "And he opened the bottomless pit, and smoke arose out of the pit like the smoke of a great furnace. So the sun and the air were what? Were darkened because of the smoke of the pit. Then out of the smoke, locusts came upon the earth. And to them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power." So I have locusts, and the locusts are scorpions. "They were commanded not to harm the grass of the earth, or any green thing, or any tree, but only those men who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. And they were not given authority to kill them, but to torment them for 5 months. Their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it strikes a man." Verse 6, "In those days men will seek death and will not find it. They will desire to die, and death will flee from them." So it's a period of great angst, isn't it? Great anxiety. Verse 7, "The shape of the locust was like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were crowns of something like gold, and their faces were like the faces of men. They had hair like women's hair, and their teeth were like lions' teeth. And they had breastplates like breastplates of iron. And by the way, they're coming up from hell, because it continues saying, and the sound of their wings was like the sound of chariots with many horses running into battle. They had tails like scorpions, and there were stings in their tails. Their power was to hurt men for 5 months. And they had as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. Oh, so they have a general, right? And who is the general? The angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon. But in Greek, he has the name Apollyon, which means the destroyer. So this is quite a vivid description, isn't it? We're going to find in our next segment that this is describing a new manifestation of Satan's power from the bottomless pit in the French Revolution. Now say, how do you know that? Because in the fifth trumpet, these scorpions, that are also referred to as having characteristics of lions and tails that sting, and they rise from the bottomless pit, that's in the fifth trumpet. Where does the beast of Revelation 11 rise from, which represents the French Revolution? It rises from the bottomless pit. And I'm going to give you statements from Ellen White there where she clearly applies this symbolic language to the rise of atheism during the French Revolution. So in our next segment, we are going to take a look at what it means when it says that the angel of the bottomless pit is unbound, and this coming up, all of these demonic powers, what specific event of human history this is referring to. So let me ask, have you understood what we've studied so far? I've tried to go as slow as we can. And now we're going to talk more about the fifth trumpet during our next segment after we enjoy a delicious lunch.